Welcome to Chik Chat, the podcast where the girl with many titles talks about life, the good and the bad, and everything around it. We're going to sit, chat, share life stories and experiences, from business to relationship. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Chik Chat podcast. Today we are discussing what it means to be Black and British. If you're new here, we normally start with our challenge of the week or tip of the week. We then move on to how we are actually doing, and then we'll finish off with our win of the week. So, challenge of the week. Honestly, my challenge of the week this week is just surviving. The weather's terrible, mentally not great. So, yeah, just surviving. Let's get straight into it. Right, so I've seen a little bit of discord around what it means to be Black British. And I always think whenever I see stuff like this, that the Black British experience is definitely unique. But also there are similarities across the board to like other cultures where you've got more than one culture. But I think that as a Black British female, there is also this... How do you even explain it? I feel like those will get it. Those that get it. Those that don't. Like, being Black female and Brit is the weirdest mix of good and bad, I guess, in that sense. So, a bit of background. I was born in Zambia, grew up in England, and now I live in Northern Ireland, the north of Ireland, or whatever you want to call it. And I lived in Zambia until I was 7. So I've spent most of my life in the UK. And actually, it's quite funny thinking about. I'll have nearly spent the same amount of time in England as I will live in Northern Ireland in the next 3-ish years. So I always find it interesting because I remember one of the first times we went back to Zambia, and people joke all the time about code switching, and when I'm talking to my family and I'm talking to family back home especially, I do not sound like this. And it's really when me and G met, it's so funny because it's one of those things when you meet people that you get close to, whether that's platonically or in a relationship, you always have to explain that if you hear me talking to my parents, and this is something I used to say to my friends all the time at school, if you hear me talking and I sound different, I'm talking to my parents, I'm talking to some family member. And yeah, it's like a switch in the brain that goes from this, and it's not even something that you think about, but I go from sounding like this to what my mum calls Bembish, which is a mixture of Bemba and English, or at least what that sounds like. But yeah, already you sound different. And one of the first times we went back to Zambia, I remember going out somewhere and someone being like, well, it's obvious you're not one of us type thing. And I've gone back a good few times, and I can't lie, there was one time where we went for my cousin's wedding, and my grandma literally came up to me and was like, oh, I should have known you were a Western. I was looking, thinking, why would you be wearing that to a wedding? And my back was showing, and it wasn't even a church service, it was at a hotel, but she was like, oh, I should have known a Westerner would dress like that. And I was like, okay. And she was hilarious because she was one of those people that literally spoke her mind, whether you'd like it or not. And yeah, she used to say some very harsh things, but I do think about that quite a lot, because there seems to be this, when you're looking at family back home or the way that people back home treat you, it's like, oh, well, you didn't grow up here, so you don't understand the culture or whatever else is going on. And I always find that one a bit weird as well, because like I've said, one of my first experiences going back, it was very clear. You don't fit in with your British friends because you don't look like them. And for a long time, I didn't sound like them. But you also don't fit in back home. And there was a time where I remember, before we went, and this was when I was older, because now I can understand, what the culture is like in terms of, clothes and whatever. But I was wearing, me and my cousin had this same skirt. And when she was visiting is when we bought these. So I was thinking, because it's got a lining underneath, which is a bit of a short lining, but it had slits on the sides, but it was down to your ankles. And I was thinking, she got this, I'll be fine. And I remember going to leave the house, and she was like, "Yeah, where you're going, you will have people pulling on you, calling you a prostitute, doing this." And like, yeah, that was shocking. But then someone made a joke to be like, "Oh yeah, like you're clearly not one of us again." And it's always that like it's like us and them type that at least that's been my experience. And it's not even like it's done in a horrible way. Normally, it's just like a joke to be like, "Oh, um, yeah, you're not one of us." But I think when you grow up and you don't really fit in anywhere mentally, like, what's that supposed to do to you? Because I'm not even. Well, when I look at my brother's got a kid, and she is half white, half black. She is half British, half Zambian, and in that, she was born in England. So I think there's also a difference when, like I said, I moved to England when I was younger. So there's also a difference to me, like being born like somewhere else, growing up somewhere, but then not fitting in either one. But I think that's where when I look at like me and Gina, our relationship, I do try and take that as you take the good from all of the cultures that you've grown up with, because like I said, I'm lucky enough to have grown up now with British culture, take that or leave it for whatever it's going on right now, Zambian culture, and now Irish culture. And in that, there are loads of great things that we can take. But it's little things now, like, I remember when we were younger, my cousins also used to have, like, whenever they apply for jobs, they'd apply using different names, like the Bible names, English names, which we weren't given those because my mum and dad always said that they wanted us to be unique and proud of our names. And for a long time, I didn't understand that until I got older. And I think the meaning of a name, like my name means thumb, the great one. So if you went 5, 10 minutes trying not to use your thumb, you'd realize how important I am. And I can't lie, when you look at like my career, the things that I do, the person that I embody the meaning of my name, whether that's just by accident or it's, I believe that there is something in that. So for me, being a Black Brit is something special because you kind of just pave your own way in the sense that however you're going to do it is going to be different to how anyone else has done it. It's going to be unique because, again, I might be a female Black Brit, but like I said, I've also moved countries again. Like, I didn't even think twice about moving countries again. Why? Because my mum and dad had done it twice. So why couldn't I do it? Why do I love travel? And why do I call multiple places travel? Because to me, travel's more about the people. That's home for me. Oh, I just realised I just registered. I said that wrong. Why do I care about the places that I call home? And that is because to me, home is about the people that are there. It's about more than just a physical building. It's how you feel in a particular place. So I'm lucky enough to have multiple homes, which means that I can pack a bag and go and stay somewhere for a good few weeks, and that will be home. When I talk about going to my mum and dad's house, that's home. Where you see me filmed / where you see online, that's my home. I also have homes with my brother, with family members back in Zambia. Like, I'm lucky enough to have all those places as home. But yeah, I definitely think that being black and British is very nuanced and very complex because even when it comes to like dating, how black women are perceived. Do you know what? It's not even just dating because I keep having these parallels between dating and working life, but how black women are perceived. It's like you're also kind of not just allowed to strive for more without it looking negative. Now, whether that is that people feel like you're being boastful or people feel like you're throwing things back in the face, it feels as if people are trying to humble you when actually, like, why don't we support each other more? Like, that's a question I used to ask myself when I was growing up until I realised actually you'll find your community, you'll find the people that get it, and as time goes on, you will also create your own new normal. And that's something that I really try to work hard towards because, like, I've had this conversation with my black brother and my cousins a lot because they've got kids that were born in England and we weren't. So to me, it's important that they understand both of their cultures because that is important. Like, it's a part of who they are and it matters. And like I said, when I'm talking to G, like we talked about everything from names. You know, I said I wanted Zambian and Irish, and he was like, that's going to be very hard. It's like you're constantly going to be spelling your name and explaining it and so on. So we'll see how that goes. But we've also talked about things like languages. And whilst I can understand Bemba, I also don't speak it. And I don't speak it because, again, as immigrants, when you first move, people, if your family's like, keep speaking English, like, get used to that. And again, English was my second language. I already knew English, but I guess our parents also went through stuff that we will never understand and won't be able to understand. And a lot of that is down to racism. So they did the best that they could. And we joke that my dad always used to be like, oh, once you get to our gate, you're back in Zambia. And yeah, doing that also meant that like language is being lost that I don't want it to be forever lost. So again, when I've thought about me and G having kids, I've said to my parents that I want them to predominantly speak to our kids in Bemba, at least until they understand the language and they know kind of what's going on. Because I sometimes feel silly when I try and speak Bemba because I like it's the accent, and even when I'm trying not to sound as deeply as I do with an English accent and I'm using Bembish, family is still like, I still don't know what you're saying. Like, you're still saying it in such a westernized way. So I also think like it works both ways because someone's trying to speak their language and you're like, oh, you're an outsider, you're a Westerner. But then when someone's trying to speak, you're making fun. Like, that's not good because my experience of that has also been like, oh, well, I'm now shy or I feel embarrassed. So what's the point? I'll just keep speaking in English and I'll understand. But my brother doesn't understand. He kind of understands, but he doesn't understand or speak Bemba. So I also think, it's such an interesting one because being black and British is having to deal with all of the crap from both sides and not always seeing the benefits, but also having this world of opportunities that basically is yours to have. And you'll see people with similar stories. Like, I was really lucky. Like I always say, like, my mum and dad were around. My dad might have travelled, but we spent time downstairs. We didn't spend time in our rooms. Home has always been a safe space for us. So I try to embody that in terms of what I'm doing and what I'm providing for like my nieces and nephews and so on. But yeah, I just always find it funny when people do start talking about the Black British experience and then trying to invalidate people, especially Black women, because there's this whole rhetoric as well around the people that we choose to date and why we choose to date those people, even though, again, I've seen a lot of people talking about this, but you go where you're loved. And my experience of dating someone that looks like me wasn't positive. And again, I predominantly grew up around white people and then went to school with predominantly Asians and different types of Asians and Arabs. So even in that, I feel like people just do not take the time to try and understand what it might mean for someone else or for someone to have that mix of culture, because there's this confusion in your own brain. And then when you are trying to do stuff for both, you're then being told you don't fit in. So then it's like, all right, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to do me and figure it out myself. Then people are like, who do you think you are, trying to do things on your own? So I guess, like, what's the point of this podcast? This podcast for me is about the younger generations and the people growing up seeing people like me that do stuff online. Like, I really want to be able to show people that what's hard might be hard, but it doesn't mean that you can't get through it. The Black British experience is beautiful as well as it is painful, because again, that whole thing of fitting in, maybe it's that you're not supposed to completely fit in one place, because again, we are having our own families and those families will be of different ethnicities, different cultures and so on. So if we don't embrace it, what's going to happen? Like, that's where the erasure happens. But I also think that's where, as a Black woman, and as the Black women that I've seen, the Black women I've seen really make sure that the culture is still celebrated, that you're still taught what you would have been taught if you were back home. Like, I'm really lucky I've got aunties that I can ask questions to about culture and about just different topics. And even though maybe I've grown up in the Western world, I'm also really glad that I've got people that are open-minded that can go, okay, this is your understanding, this is what it actually means. This is what it means, like when you're getting married or when you have like a kitchen party, a bridal shower type thing, the traditional ones. This is what you do and this is why. So that when you're informed, because that's my other point, like when family don't, I think there's this whole thing of like culture's just passed on for the sake of it, and you just do it because the last generation did it. And I found that, again, part of the Black British experience as a woman is questioning that and being like, okay, I'm going to take these bits because I understand it, I agree with it. I'm going to leave this because I still don't understand it and no one's explaining it to me. So to me, the people that also explain things and explain culture and allow you to learn, those are the people that I absolutely love, because we're the next generation, and I'm pointing at myself, like, we are that next generation and we will be bringing these kids into the world. So I'm quickly going to end it there. And yeah, check-in wise, yeah, like I said, I've not been great and I didn't really want to kind of talk about that, but I am okay. And my win of the week is, do you know, I've been quite productive so far. Even though I don't want to work, I have been working, and I've recorded this, and it's taken me like 2 weeks to record this. So yeah, I'm going to love you and leave you right there. If you've got any questions or any bits you want to talk about in terms of being Black British, feel free. And I'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye.